and welcome to episode 205 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We're amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for anyone else who likes going out under the stars. Shane, we just finished recording with Don McColl's, and we had some audio trouble there at the end, hey?
Yeah. So hopefully the edits, got rid of kind of the worst part of it and made it an enjoyable listen. But I really enjoyed talking to Don. It was a lot of fun. He's a phenomenal observer. He's been doing it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And, I always appreciate, like you and I were having a little bit of a discussion before we hit the record button here. I really appreciate these folks that just get out and observe, and it's not as much about the gear. It's really just about the observations. And, I really would like to get into a conversation about comet hunting with Don. Mm-hmm. Like he referred to it, I think, a few times as a systematic approach.
I know. I really wanted to go there, and we were running a little low on time, and I thought I would try to work it in a little, and then the audio dropped it again. And I guess that's, shame on me for trying to push things a little too far with the technology.
No, it's too bad, but I think we'll probably have another conversation with Don in the future, which would be amazing. Because I'm very curious about comet hunting. It's something I've thought about. I've read a little bit about how you do it, but it would be amazing to hear from probably the greatest or the most well-known visual comet discoverer of our time. It'd be very interesting to hear his approach and method.
It would be just really neat. And I wouldn't mind chatting a little bit more about his equipment. I mean, he has photos on his website, donmccols.com. And there's like a whole section of like all the telescopes he's had over the years. And I almost wouldn't mind having that up and saying, okay, tell us about this, just letting him drill down like he did on the 2 or 3. I guess he talked about 3 telescopes, but he's had so many more, and it would be really neat to kind of get his just his own like sort of personal take on those, and his own personal take, like you said, on comet hunting. And just some of like the philosophy he kind of touched on a bit too there, which I think is hugely important, like you said, about not as much of a focus on the gear. Like he said, I didn't spend any money. I won't spend much money on equipment. I just like to do this. And that was really cool. And then as well, like at the start, like he was sort of talking about how some newcomers to astronomy are using some of these automated systems, and about how they're going to come along and sort of be observing sort of alongside the rest of us, just in their own way. Right. I thought that was just remarkable. He talked about how he made a lot of notes in that, how he prepares for his podcast, which definitely is very different from how we do it. And I just how well thought out he is, maybe is what I'm trying to say. Is it's just mind blowing how well thought out and deep thinking he is.
Yeah. Another thing I'd like to pick his brain a little bit about is the digital setting circles that he referenced.
Yeah.
You can add these to a lot of alt-az mounts. And, for those that haven't heard of these, or maybe aren't too familiar with digital setting circles, basically, what they are is there's an encoder on each axis that feeds back to a computer that essentially tells you kind of the coordinates of where your telescope is pointed at. And then some of these digital setting circle computers, you can input whatever object you may want to find in there. And then it's not a go-to, but it becomes a push-to. And the computer tells you when your telescope is now pointed at the right point to find the object that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So it can really expedite finding things, particularly like if you're in maybe some light pollution where you're having a hard time seeing some naked eye stars. Digital setting circles, or even a go-to really for that matter, can help get you there a little faster. So I've always been intrigued by them because they're sort of like that in-between compromise of like absolutely no tech in the field, like how you and I normally observe, mm-hmm. but they're not quite as advanced as a go-to which means they also don't come with some of the headaches that go-tos will sometimes introduce in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by them. I've tried to use manual setting circles before in the past, and if you have a mount that has like, when it comes to manual setting circles, most EQ mounts have them, but a lot of the EQ mounts, like the setting circle scale, is almost unusable because it's not very accurate, or it's just not a large enough scale, I guess. And then it's hard to get precise measurements. But on my Lusmandi EQ mount, the setting circles are really nice. And I've used them a few times and they are awesome. Like, they make the observing session a lot smoother from the backyard.
Yeah. And I mean, I do use my AZ GTI, in the field a fair bit now, although like coin toss 50-50. I don't even turn the power on it. And then sometimes what I'll do, like the other 50% of the time, is I'll just get it on an object. If I'm going to sketch, I'll just flip the tracking on. But yeah, typically I don't think I've ever really used the go-to. I think I used it enough to realize it wasn't quite accurate enough for what I was trying to do. And then after I sent it back to the shop, because the azimuth bound, when it came back, I noticed that it was extremely accurate, because I just thought, oh, I wonder if the go-to is more accurate now. And then when it came back, it seemed like the go-to was pretty much perfect, as long as you went through the proper process of leveling it and doing the alignment, that sort of thing. But anyway, yeah, I don't really use the go-to as much, but do much enjoy the just the tracking capability is a real dream when you're trying to switch around powers in order to see what the object looks like under different magnifications. I really appreciate the tracking for that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a nice luxury and can really enhance some observing, particularly if you're sketching. I would imagine it's almost essential then.
Yeah, like at higher power for sure. Like when I was doing those Mars sketches in 2020, there's no way I could have done those without the tracking. I mean, it just would have been, there's no way. Like, because I was using at times, I forget, like 350 power, whatever it was. And, you tap the telescope and, like Mars would go right out of the 70-degree field of view and then back to the other side out of the field of view again, because I don't know how big the 70-degree field of view is at 350 power, or whatever it was, but it's pretty small, like less than a quarter of a degree anyway. So before we go too much further, just wanted to put this in. One of the questions that we didn't get to with Don was recommended books, and this one I was really interested because I own this book. Like I said, I have the Messier Marathon Observer's Guide, Handbook and Atlas, a complete guide to running your own Messier Marathon by Don McCols. And he is still self-publishing this book. This is how I originally got the book. Like almost pretty close to 30 years ago now. He did a second edition and is self-publishing it. And apparently he said to us after the recording, Shane, that the version that I have has been going for like $50 used online. And it's a paper copy with a plastic binding. It's a good quality workbook because I've had mine that long. And yeah, it's a little bit dinged up or whatever, but the paper is very good quality. And the information is great. It was the first deep sky book for observing that I bought. And I think it's excellent. And if people want to order their own, they don't have to pay $50 for an old used copy like mine. You can get a brand new copy from Don directly. They're $35 plus postage, I believe. And anyway, you can write Don. He gave us the email address for those orders, which is dontheastronomer@gmail.com. And I believe all people have to do is just email him and say that they would like to buy a copy of his Messier Marathon Observer's Guide book. And what's so great about it is that it's a guidebook on observing all of the Messier objects. Plus, he's got charts in there that are just excellent that he's kind of made up with all the objects. And it really does guide you through. So even if maybe you're not interested as much in doing a marathon, which is not how I used it. I used it once for doing a marathon, which was fun. But this is the book that I used for observing all of the Messier objects. And that's how it was recommended to me by somebody and said, oh, go and get in touch with this person. He'll sell you a a copy. It's it's a paper-bound copy. It's self-published, but it's excellent. And he's a meticulous guy, Shane. Like, I mean, you're really getting a quality in-depth analysis of observing how to observe and how to observe all the messy objects for $35. So I think it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I think that's a great deal. And, there's a cool factor that you're getting it directly from the person that wrote it. So that's, that's a neat opportunity. You don't get that every time. Most of these books go off to a publisher, and then you're dealing with, third parties and fourth parties and things like that. So it's kind of neat that this is directly from Don.
Yeah. And again, like if it goes at a publication again, because it might, because he is self-publishing it, I get the feeling like he's probably just created like a limited run, and then again, like the price just doubles, like all good astronomy books, even though it's not from a publisher. But I think he did have a book on the messy objects that was in publication, then out of publication. I think it was with like Cambridge University Press. And anyhow, Don is an extremely reputable person. I had no problem all that time ago sending him, I think, a check at that time. Now he probably takes some sort of digital payment. I don't know. You'd have to check with him. And I think that this is not only an excellent book on how to observe all the messy objects, it's a good book on how to observe. And he is somebody who gives back to the astronomy community, and you and I have been the fortunate recipients of his generosity. So, we're really supporting somebody who's trying to make the astronomy world a better place for everybody.
Exactly.
Yep. Good stuff. How was your week?
Not too bad. No astronomy. I think last night might have been one of the only nights where I think we had some clearness. And that didn't last long. I think by about 10:30, it was fairly cloudy. And prior to that, we had my parents over for supper. So
nice.
I did not have any observing time last night.
Nice. What did you bake them? What did you cook them?
We got some takeout, actually.
Nice.
That's good. We took the easy way out. My parents have never had East Indian food. My wife and I love it. Wow. So we introduced them to that cuisine, and it was fantastic.
Wow. Yes. We used to make a curry. One curry or another was like Thursday nights back when we were in university, because we lived in a place that had quick and easy access to all kinds of amazing cuisine, essential cooking elements, at our local stores and that sort of thing, just because of where we lived. And so, yeah, we made curries every night. And one of the best East Indian restaurants was at the end of our driveway, in the apartment building that we lived in. So, yeah, we love that as well. So very cool. Yeah, good stuff. And I noticed that it was somewhat clear, I think the night before last too, but the moon is up, and we're going through a big temperature change here. So we were down into the -30s again last week with the wind, and now we are flirting with above zero temperatures, and we're a little bit concerned all this snow is going to melt. I think that the drift that's in behind my place, it's about 12 feet high now, and it's running in parts, it's about 400 feet long, I think. So that's a lot of snow out there.
Yeah, there is a lot of snow. We're moving into some quite warm temperatures, like +8 this week, and potentially clear skies. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't get too wet out there. But the exciting part for me is I think we are getting back into some observing conditions here real soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We were chatting as well earlier on this morning about when my place should clear out, and the spot where we park there's 2 or 3 spots you can park, and those are the spots that are going to melt first, which is great. And there's lots of spots, and the neighbors were all super great. I don't think people are going to mind if we set up telescopes on the side of the road or whatever out there. I think everybody's pretty cool. So I might be doing that hopefully sooner than later, as soon as it's not too muddy. It can be muddy there for sure, but sometimes we get those nights where it's melting in the day, but the ground's still frozen, and anything that's on the surface just kind of freezes up a bit, and it's no problem. Cool. All right. So I've been plugging away on some of that Kemble stuff, So far, I've transposed the list that was in the Deep Sky magazine and had to copy it all over into basically like a spreadsheet. And then I updated all the information from Wolfgang Steinecke. So he's I think the one that probably has the best and most updated information as far as like coordinates, magnitudes, and object types, and all that. He wrote the book on the NGC and the IC a few years ago. I forget what it was called exactly. They have one of his books here, but I don't have that one. And then I plotted them all in Uranometria. But yeah, there's still one. I don't know if you've observed like the Heart and the Soul nebulae before, Shane.
Yeah, very faintly, I remember it when we were in Grasslands. Yeah. But like even there, under outstanding skies, there wasn't. It was extremely faint. Yeah.
They're tough to see. And there's one NGC 896, which Kemble observed, and then he also observed IC. I think it's 1795 or 1705. It's one or the other. And he was comparing 896 to a variety of different things. I thought they were separate nebulae, and Kemble drew them as separate nebulae. But then I see in Steinecke, I think he says they're just one. But when you actually look at Uranometria, it has them split into the two that I kind of thought they were. So I don't know. It's sort of I think it almost doesn't matter. Like people are making calls when they're going through this, like the data, right? Like they're making calls as they look at an object. For one person, they might, okay, this is just all the same thing. For the next person, they're okay. It's two different objects. So there is a little bit of an element of that to going through this kind of stuff, and then kind of sorting it out a little bit can be a little bit confusing, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So read through some of his articles, observations. Had a quick email correspondence with Alan Whitman, who's a contributing editor, Sky and Telescope magazine. He made an interesting observation. He had sent me of an object that I've been publishing for a few years now. Maybe he'll write. Maybe he'll write in Sky and Telescope about it and include my my object that I had taken a look at some years ago now. That'd be cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Ethan, one of our listeners that has the Unistellar telescope.
Yep.
I think tonight maybe or recently he tweeted out anyway that he's hoping to image Kemble's Cascade.
Oh, really?
Based on the episode that we
that
recently
would be awesome.
about Kemble. Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where Ethan's going in the hobby. Kind of like what Dom was saying in our episode we just recorded with him about how different people are getting into the hobby in different ways now and are observing kind of alongside of us. And I really like that. And that demonstrates that like he's observing in a different way, but in a way kind of observing alongside of us. And I think that's super cool. Yeah.
Agreed.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. We've had some emails. Really appreciate people sending us in emails to make sure that we have good material and not ramble on too much for our two episodes a week. Had an email here from Peter. Don't know if you do you want to read this one?
Yeah, I'll go through it.
Go for it.
So it begins with hi, Chris and Shane. I especially enjoyed today's show about Father Kemble, an inspiring and perspective-changing story. By coincidence, I just got a Celestron C5 yesterday. The backstory is related to my switching to the C8 later in the year. I was thinking about getting a C6 as well, but they are just they are just as unobtainable right now, except on the used market. But it turns out that Amazon has a supply of C5s.
Yep.
They are selling them in one place for $749 and in another area for $538. So,
and I see that on our Amazon.ca, they're 600 and something, which is a pretty good deal for that telescope.
Yeah, for sure. So Peter says that he chose the latter. It came from the UK. It's sold as a spotting scope, but I was ready to set it up as a regular SCT. It's a lovely little scope, and I know I'm going to have a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
It has got some peculiarities.
That's a hard word to say.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I've put a 2-inch visual back on it, but the optical path is narrowed to 1.25 inches in the back. So people do use 2-inch eyepieces with it, though. And then he goes on to say that the effective aperture is less because the central obstruction occupies 39% of the area. And then he says that's true of all SCTs, of course, and we'll have to think about all these things. Mm-hmm. It's very light at 6 pounds, but it's a bit like handling a football. I'm thinking to put a rail on top and a mount as a handle. And that can be really handy even for refractors. I know some people do that. Mm-hmm. The nice thing too with SCTs, just as a sidebar here, the moment arm issue that you have with refractors is kind of gone because these SCTs are a fairly compact telescope. The focal length is created by bouncing the light path off of a couple mirrors, and as such, you get a fairly small telescope, and it's a little bit easier to mount.
Yeah.
So Peter goes on to say the picture of M42 below was taken with the scope almost right out of the box last night, but with a 0.63 reducer / flattener. So there is 20 exposures of 3 minutes each that he stacked. It's one of the best I've done so far. I love how the object fills a frame and that there's good coverage of nebulosity without completely blowing out the core, which that's really hard with M42. If you I'm no astrophotographer, but I have taken a couple images of M42 with my 120 millimeter ED refractor. And yeah, if you for me anyway, when I was trying to get some of the extent of the nebulae, it just blew out the middle. It was so overexposed. So
it's a beautiful shot, Peter.
Really good.
I wondered though, he didn't say what he was. Did he say what mount he had it on, or he didn't include the mount?
I don't know. I assume the C5 came with a mount.
I thought it was just a spotting scope.
Was it just the scope? Okay.
Yeah, so I think he must be mounting on something else. So maybe Peter, you can let us know, because that was a beautiful shot, and I was like, "Whoa, that is very, very sharp." Beautiful job, beautiful color rendition, very natural looking.
Yeah, I was quite impressed.
Very nice.
Yeah, and then Peter finishes up by saying, in other news, inspired by Chris and Mary McIntyre, I picked up an AZ GTI mount. Again, this came from the UK, from FLO for $300 without the tripod. They're back ordered in the US. I'm in the process of getting it kitted out for my Twilight One tripod. There's an adapter coming from Burlabach and a stronger Vixen shoe from ADM. Hopefully have it up and running next week. All the best from Peter.
I think that'll be a nice combination. I'm really curious. I really went and looked at these. I was like, well, I wonder how much they're in Canada. And it's a good deal because I think the typical price is like $799 or $800, give or take. And I think it's for a C5.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, that's only pretty much $200 off with that Amazon price. And I was like, I just don't need another small little telescope. That's probably a bit much. But yeah, when I saw those images, I was like, whoa, those are good little telescopes still, and really.
I've always been impressed with Celestron Cassegrains. I don't know if I've ever looked through a bad one, to be honest, but the smaller ones I've really been blown away by. There was a member of the Regina Club that I think he still has a C6. And it just blows my mind how it punches above its weight. Whenever I look through it, I'm always surprised at what I'm able to see. And I have to look at look at the scope to confirm that it is indeed a C6 and not like a C8 or something like that. They're really nice scopes.
I was going to get a C6 for a long time. This was when they first came out, and I ended up getting just a really great deal on a 6-inch Russian Mac, one of the Intis options used. and from somebody in Florida. And anyway, it was just like almost half the price of the C6. So that was the option I went with. That's like maybe 15 years ago now. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you considered, Chris, getting the Vixen shoe, like the ADM shoe, to put on your AZ GTI?
I have it.
You have it?
Yeah, I have it, but I didn't put it on because I noticed that issue that ended up getting worse with the binding on the bottom, and I was a little bit concerned that if I modded the mount with that, because you kind of have to rip off the sticker and maybe they never mentioned anything when I sent it back, but I was a little bit concerned about doing that level of modification. But once I get it out a few more times, I may come knocking and see if you can help me swap that out, because you have to like unscrew the one that's in there now. It's a little bit of a process. It's not too bad, but I feel like you'd be a good resource for me to tap into when it comes up. Yeah, I bought one. Yeah, I bought it. Looks good. Yeah, I'd like to do that sooner than later for sure, now that I have it running properly.
Yeah, and it can really make a difference adding like a better dovetail shoe onto your mount. And like my real life example is I have the Explore Scientific Twilight 2 mount. You've seen it before. I've had it out many times.
Yep.
What I did is, like, it came with kind of the standard, I don't know, I call it a puck almost, a puck shoe. Like, it's kind of a round shoe. It accepts your Vixen dovetail. But it's not very big, and there's not a lot of pressure applied to the Vixen dovetail. Like, it's a small point. And so I replaced one side with the ADM Vixen shoe, and it's I think it's about 6 or 7 inches long.
Yeah.
So like it really snugs down on like a much larger portion of your dovetail.
Yeah.
And it did make it more stable. Like, I had less vibration at the eyepiece after I put that shoe on. So it certainly can make a difference. And, it's one of these things, like you and I have talked a lot about, you buy a telescope, then you spend some time, getting better rings or doing, small changes, modifications to enhance its performance. One of the things you can do with your mount is put on a better shoe, depending on what it came with. And that shoe can add some stability.
Yeah, I was actually this little bit of a tangent here, I suppose, but I was watching some videos by Skywatcher. I think each week or so they have a Skywatcher video that gets put out by their product specialist in the States. I'm not sure where he is exactly. And somebody had asked something similar to this about knobs and attaching plates and this sort of thing. And, hey, has Skywatcher ever considered doing this, that, or the other thing? And he said, no, look, ADM does this, just go buy the part from them. So I actually don't know. I almost would like to interview them, because one, I do really like the Skywatcher products. And then two, I was really curious that they pretty much like just, recommended people go to ADM. So I'm not sure if they would balk too much. Like, if they got it in, they're like, oh, it's an ADM part, so no worries. Like, maybe it's totally fine. I almost wouldn't mind kind of pressing them on that a bit, just to see what the actual story is, since they were recommending that for, in this case, it wasn't the AZ GTI, it was the AZ 6EQ or the 6EQZ or I can't remember the product name, but it's their larger, or their largest AZ equatorial mount. But anyway, yeah, they were actually recommending people to go to ADM, and gave the guy's name and website address, like the whole bit. So they definitely weren't averse to recommending those parts. So it kind of made me feel a little bit better about just slapping it on there and just not worrying about it, because Skywatcher seemed to give them the endorsement and indicated that they wouldn't be changing out any of their stuff, because it would just add too much on the get and going cost of things, which a lot of people might balk at and not get the product. So anyway, that's my take on that. Yeah.
And just a quick note, ADM is a company. If you're not familiar with that, ADM is a company online. I think they're located in the US, but they make dovetails, they make shoes, they make a few other things too. So it's a neat place if you're looking for some accessories for your mount, or like I say, there's a few other sort of odds and ends that they make, like counterweights and stuff like that. Check it out if you've never been there. It's a good resource.
Yeah, you can go to admaccessories.com. And like Shane said, they make a variety of plates for both Vixen and Losmedy. Plates and different telescope mounts, including the AZ GTI, and lots of the other mounts by Skywatcher and others. And it's very good stuff. But yeah, I have it sitting on my thing, and they're also available. You don't have to buy direct. You can buy direct from them. I think I did buy directly from ADM because it just didn't matter. But you can also buy them their products through like Ontario Telescopes, High Point Scientific, OPT. First Light Optics, which is FLO, lots of other telescope stores. Telescopes Plus, one of our favorites, also carry all of their stuff as well. So you can buy them from direct from the company, or you can buy them from a reseller, and it's all about the same price, I think. But yeah, I just ordered direct, and paid for the duty or whatever as it came over the border.
Yeah, right on.
Cool. All right, we have an email from Chris. Can I read Chris's email? Chris reading Chris.
Chris reading Chris. Let's do it.
Yeah. So he also wrote about the Kemble episode that we did, episode 203. So Chris says, "Hi, Chris and Shane. Really enjoyed show number 203. You did a great job of humanizing Kemble and the Cascade. I've not spent enough time with it, but we'll make sure it's on the list. My ears also perked up when you discussed Pasmo's cluster. While I don't know him personally, John is a member of my club, and I've talked to him a few times. I had noticed his cluster in the Jumbo Star Atlas. I think, is that the Jumbo Pocket Atlas? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's my assumption.
Yeah. After the last time speaking with him, my club had taken a bus trip to the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia to see the Museum of the Moon exhibit that was there. It was right before the pandemic started. Side story about that trip was that Dr. Derek Pitts, the chief astronomer of the Institute, is a friend of one of the other club members, and they had an amazing treated view of the double-double through the rooftop observatory's 10-inch Zeiss refractor. I think both our ears perked up on that one.
Yeah, I replied to Chris and said I had to pick myself up off the floor. A 10-inch Zeiss refractor would be incredible to look through.
Yeah, and I actually appreciate you writing back, because I read Chris's email, and I was reading the link in the notes that he had sent me. But I just got slammed with work at the end of last week, and just wasn't able to reply to all the emails I typically would. So, going on, Serendipity. Chris goes on to say, Serendipity also treated us to an ISS flyover, bright meteor, even in the light polluted sky. And he mentions that John Pasmo was an ardent reseller of the RESC handbook each year, but has been unable to perform the service due to the COVID challenges over the past 2 years. So he said, you prompted me to check out John Pasmo's site, and I read his article about the discovery of the cluster. You can find that at www.nyskies.org/articles/pasmo/pazclus.htm. That's PAZCLUS. The club he mentions is the club that I belong to, Chris says, which is the Amateur Observers Society of New York here on Long Island. And that's where Chris is the editor of the Celestial Observer, aka CO. I'm also the webmaster of their site, which is www.aosny.org. Hope you enjoyed the article. I sure did. I really enjoyed it. And then he goes on to say that Shane loved the tap forms. He's been using it for over a year for tracking my gear and other stuff. Great choice. So yeah, that was a jam-packed one. And yeah, I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole. There's some other articles, I think, on there by John Pasmo. And man, I'd love to talk to that guy. I think I really love Pasmo's cluster. I had also discovered it like 20 years or 30 years too late. It was one of the first clusters that I kind of just ran across and was like, whoa, that is something. And of course, it was Pasmo's cluster, and had looked it up. But yeah, it's just this beautiful little cluster sort of off Milky Way, and up there in, I think it's on like the Camelopardalis Cassiopeia border or something like that. And great little cluster. Maybe it's, anyway. It's up there. Be great to talk to him. It's a really, really neat object. Have you seen Pasmo's cluster?
I don't know if I have. As you were reading this email, I was trying to think back, and I don't think so.
You may have like just even looked at it through my telescope, because I've often had the cluster in my scope. I think it's actually cataloged as stock 23 open cluster. I think that's the one. Yes, that's the one. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking up here off the top of my head. But yeah, it's in Camelopardalis, and it's got like these orange, yellowish stars. I think I see one of them is very orange, and then some V patterns appear, and it's super cool cluster. Very bright, has some bright stars and some fainter stars. So it's one of those clusters that looks great under a light polluted sky, looks great at a dark sky. It's just a really nice cluster. But Jürgen Stock, I was reading about this in the articles that Chris had sent. Jürgen Stock had cataloged it as stock 23, but Jürgen Stock wasn't creating like a catalog of new objects. It's not like he was going out and creating like a fresh catalog of, okay, these things haven't been observed before or discovered before. Jürgen Stock believed that this was already a found cluster because it was so bright and obvious and blah, blah, blah. So he simply cataloged it, and I think it was measuring like the radial velocities of stars or spectrum or something like that. I can't remember what it was exactly in larger open clusters, and had done his work and kind of moved along, not realizing that that was a novel discovery. And then John Pasmo came along, I think just a few years later. I think these two folks were working in the 70s. I think Stock cataloged it is part of his as his survey in like the early 70s. And then it was just like a few years later in the late 70s that Pasmo actually ran across it and said, this is a new cluster. And it hadn't been in the charts. It was uncharted, because I think people had realized that Jürgen Stock was just simply going through some of these other known clusters. But anyway, had actually made a legitimate discovery there. And then, of course, Pasmo reported it. And then it was later kind of linked up, but it was 100% total independent discovery. So pretty interesting story there. Just like, and he was just out, John Pasmo was just out like observing one night, kind of with like a little refractor. Kind of, it sounds like something like our ST80s equivalent in the 1970s at the time. So pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Should I move on to the next one?
Go for it.
Okay. So Clark, who's been on the show before, wrote us, and I lived vicariously through this email for multiple reasons.
That was a cold day when he wrote us from Mexico.
Yeah. So yeah, the first part is Clark is on a nice winter vacation to a sunny latitude, and so living vicariously through that experience. And I always appreciate observing reports from, southern latitudes, or more south than where we are. So it's pretty cool. So Clark wrote, "Hello, Chris and Shane. I did manage to get up at 2 a.m. and haul myself out to the beach in Mexico on the Gulf. My latitude is about 21 degrees north. The very warm Gulf water, I believe, makes for perpetually poor transparency, especially near the horizon.
Yeah.
Which is too bad because, when you're that far south, I think, the horizon just teases you more and more and more.
Yeah.
So Clark goes on to say, despite some clouds and local light pollution, the Southern Cross was seen low to the south as it was transiting at the time. Yeah, that is really cool. The jewel box cluster in Crux was seen in my 7x50 binoculars, but was uninspiring due to the conditions. I noted that Crux has been seen way below and directly due south of Corvus when both constellations are transiting. Both of these constellations are similarly tiny, with Crux being the smallest of all 88. Their 4-star asterism appears to be the same size and area. The cross, however, is much brighter. To the east of Crux lies Alpha and Beta Centauri, two very bright stars that point to the cross. The other notable observation was the area of sky of Eastern Centaurus and Lupus. The area might be the size of the Big Dipper asterism, but has an incredible amount of bright stars, especially in the 2nd and 3rd magnitude range. It might be the richest part of the entire sky with stars of such brightness. And then Clark says, see page 48 of the Pocket Sky Atlas. And then after 10 minutes, he said he went back to bed. But pretty cool observation. I like it for a couple of reasons that I haven't mentioned too. Like, again, just the simplicity of binoculars and naked eye observing, is so pleasing sometimes. And especially, I think, when I go to different latitudes, I really do like the naked eye aspect just to see how different the sky looks. My wife and I were in Cuba 2 years ago. I think it was just before the pandemic hit. So whatever that would have been, 2019, 2020. We were there for a wedding, and it was just fascinating to see how different the sky looks from, about 20 degrees north.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very cool. And it was kind of doing those sort of trips with just binoculars that really prompted me to get my 60 millimeter scope, because I wanted sort of the ultimate portable little refractor to be able to take in a big swath of sky. So yeah, that was really neat. No, I really appreciate that email from Clark. So yeah, good stuff. Well, Shane, anything else to add to this episode?
No, that's everything, Chris.
All right. Well, thanks again for having a chat. If people want to send us their observations, we really appreciate it, because our skies have been so poor, but fingers crossed we're into warmer weather now, hopefully. And you can always send those into actualastronomy@gmail.com. And we always appreciate it when people like, subscribe, or send us a review, of our podcast, because that helps out the algorithms, helps out people to find us. And in general, we just really appreciate it. So thanks again to everybody out there for listening.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.